One thing about the shorter deal, that if, in fact, ESPN was to redo the ACC deal, which we look at as why would they do that? Could that then make it more desirable in any way for Notre Dame?
I suppose. I mean, sure. But I don't know. I mean, you're putting me on the spot here thinking about this question.
I'm reading it myself.
No, I know. I'm trying to think of it while I'm also trying to answer it. It's a question that's a little complicated. It's not just yes or no. I'm just trying to look at it from Notre Dame's point of view. What would also that accomplish? But I mean, what is their goal? Are they going to make like huge SEC Big Ten type money in the new ACC renegotiated deal? With that, I mean, has to happen for that to make any sense, right? Because otherwise, if it's not like some giant money, okay. So if they shorten the ACC deal, and the grant of rights is now suddenly, instead of being out in 2036, is in 2026, what changes with that? Like, the money would have to be astronomical for Notre Dame to want to sign a shorter deal, because otherwise, what's the point?
Well, if they were to have a shorter deal that allows teams that feel like they have the ability to move on to make more money, if they want to renegotiate it, the bottom line comes down to this: we don't trust ESPN.
No, but I'm just saying, like, what would be Notre Dame's goal with signing to join the ACC in football? Because they've signed a shorter grant of rights agreement. So Notre Dame makes this transformational decision to join a conference in football, and they choose the third of the best because there's now a shorter grant of rights agreement. So, again, what is the benefit? They don't need to join the ACC. They don't need to save the ACC. They don't need to help any of these other teams. And they're not under contract right now. So why would they sign a contract unless you give me a reason for why they would do that? So to me, the only reason why you would do that is not prestige. They don't need it. It's not the brand. They don't need that. It's not the teams. You'd have to just give gobsmacking amount of money to Notre Dame for them to do that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and they might.
I mean, sure, yeah. If you say, "Hey, we'll give you $4 billion to join the ACC for 5 years," then I'd be the first to sign the contract for them if I was anybody who worked at Notre Dame and could do such. But outside of that, yeah, you'd have to really throw some giant money out there, and how giant can you go before and what can you then do for the other? And are they making the same as the rest of the ACC? Because I doubt it.
Clemson and others are not going to say, hey, we've discussed this before. If others in a conference that's still alive and still either thriving or not, the one thing you got to be careful about doing is bringing anybody into the conference, even though it might help strengthen you, that gets more than what you get when you have been a part of the conference forever.
Yeah, we had somebody ask, hey, would the Big 12 give uneven shares, give more to Oregon and Washington for joining the Big 12? It's like, no, because they're barely above the best teams, if they're even above those teams in the Big 12 right now, including the exits of Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, Oregon's a fun brand, and Washington is too, but they are not light years ahead of the Oklahoma States of the world, in my opinion, or even competitively Baylor, or a couple of other teams you could throw into that mix, whether you're talking current or future. But I mean, they're great brands. They're not good enough that they're going to walk into the Big 12 and be making more money than anybody who's already in the Big 12. Just bottom line, they're not that big. Notre Dame clearly is, but as you pose the question, I'm just trying to talk it out here. I don't see what benefit there would be to Notre Dame to do that. I don't see what unless it was just, again, $500 million cash straight to South Bend. What purpose would it serve for them?
Here's a note. It's something to bring up. Here's a note, and there's a couple other texts, and we want to get to as well. College football realignment. This is from SI.com. California regions to discuss litigation amid UCLA move. This was expected, but it all just depends on what state you're in, how the legislature or how your state government runs. But this is the University of California Board of Regents planning to meet and discuss the consequences of the move of UCLA leaving along with USC for the Big Ten. Of course, UCLA a part of that Board of Regents or a part of that brand, but not USC. They're private. And any potential legal issues involved. The session will be closed. The board is obligated to inform the public if any potential litigation, though, is discussed by the group. Well, who exactly could be subject to litigation? One option is the regents are considering legal action against member institution UCLA for its planned move to the Big Ten. Another option, the board could feel itself open to litigation by other parties for UCLA attempting to leave for the Big Ten and separate itself from the UC system in athletic competition. So that's something that I think is almost like not clockwork, but expected, because if you're a part of the University of California system, and for example, California, and you're like, wait a minute, their leaving is going to hurt us. Why would we let that happen? This could be just to meet, to grandstand, I don't know, but that story is on SI.com.
Yeah, and I don't know what quite to make of that either. I saw an education reporter in California, Blake Jones is his name, said the UC Board of Regents will discuss UCLA's membership in the Big Ten and litigation surrounding it at a closed-door meeting next week, while all accounts indicate Berkeley was caught off guard by the conference move. UCLA leadership informed Cal President Michael Drake that discussions between UCLA and the Big Ten were occurring. Drake's a former president of Ohio State, was not involved at all in those discussions. So I don't know. I barely know the characters involved or the logistics of the California system. So I don't want to speak like I know what all this actually means, but it is of interest and certainly raised some eyebrows. And I mean, we have heard of those threatening lawsuits to prevent others from leaving conferences before. So that wouldn't even be a first in this case. I don't know if there's anything actually doable as far as negating this. I find it very hard to believe, and I think if there was, there would be far more of an outcry over this little note. It'd be far bigger than a note if there was any chance, in my mind at least, that this could lead to everything careening off the tracks. So, what does it ultimately mean? I guess the Cal education people out there and those more well-versed with the logistics and the politics and how all that works could enlighten us a little bit. But, yeah, it's of interest. I just don't know how much it actually could change, if any change could occur.
From Caleb, I'm a Michigan fan. This is from Caleb in Michigan. Notre Dame claims they're a national brand. They are high on themselves. They also have too much voting power, in his opinion, for one school. For them to join a conference, they have to give up that voting power. Notre Dame is only going to do what's best for them. Can't blame them for that.
No, absolutely not. We just had Carlos Silva on here, and I've noticed that amongst the Tech fans that I see or come across, that they are one of those fan bases that's not all gung-ho about the new Big 12, and I saw where they were trying to join the Pac, some of them, multiple times. They were doing it last year, Tech to the Pac-12, when Oklahoma and Texas decided to leave. So I've definitely got those vibes from Tech folks. Carlos basically just laid it out there. What everybody's probably thinking is the same thing. You got to watch out for yourself, ultimately. I mean, you see how the alliance worked out. You see what, little handshakes and all that can do. So if you're Texas Tech or if you're UCLA or if you're BYU or whoever you are, you got to do what's best for you, and that goes for Notre Dame as well. I will ask this. I mean, is Notre Dame still Notre Dame if they're in a conference? And what I mean by that is, do you think the perception changes? Because I do think they lose a little bit of their superpower if they join a conference, even if that is the Big Ten. I think that just makes them more like everybody else, whereas right now they are very much their own thing. And by blending in with Ohio State and Michigan and Iowa and all of those schools and UCLA and USC, I know why that would be really hard to pass up and why that would be tempting for them. But do you think, even if they keep their own NBC TV deal and all that, it changes them at all? Because to me, it does weaken some of their superpower somewhat, or just the aura. The aura is affected somewhat, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're giving up a little. Well, they're literally giving up some of their independence
than everybody.
Yeah.
They're different than everybody, and there's other independents, but none of them are on par with Notre Dame. And they're an independent who's not answering to any commissioner that's on par with the Ohio States and the UTs and every big school you want to throw out there. So in my mind, I understand the argument for why they feel like the time is now to join the Big Ten and the money and, oh, my God, the money. But I do think it just kind of makes them more like everybody else, and they haven't always been like everybody else. But I would be curious to hear others' thoughts on that. So that's why I'm throwing it out there.
A couple more text lines.